What if America didn't join World War III? Well, first we have to find out what exactly World War III will look like. And according to Peter D Zimmerman, chief scientist of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and national security leader for Biden, World War III has already begun. It's not being fought with bullets or bombs. The enemy is this virus. And it has exactly one purpose: to conquer your cells and turn them into factories to make more viruses. The first case of COVID-19 was reported in the city of Wuhan in late 2019, and with the disease quickly becoming a pandemic, with new variants continuing to spread, we're certainly not out of the woods yet. But according to a dossier by the People's Liberation Army, China has been preparing for a third world war for over 6 years now, with biological weapons. US investigators obtained this document, and its contents insist that these weapons will likely be the key to winning the Third World War. The document highlights the impact it could have on the enemy's medical system, and it even touches base on the ideal weather conditions to do so. According to Weekend Australian, a document written by Chinese scientists and health officials back in 2015, so long before the pandemic started, this document states that SARS coronaviruses were a new era of genetic weapons. These viruses would be artificially manipulated into an emerging human disease virus and then subsequently weaponized and then unleashed. Peter Jennings, executive director of the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, states that this is as close to a smoking gun as we've gotten. Jennings continues and says it begins to firm up the possibility that what we're still dealing with today is the accidental release of a pathogen from military use. This is crucial information because the early stages of the pandemic were helping the US military prepare for World War III. There was a briefing back in April 14th, 2020, and in it was a warning for the commander of the US Northern Command over in Connecticut that it was about to become a COVID-19 hotspot. Now keep in mind, this was way back before tech companies started to even work on a contract tracing app, so this was a specific heads up. And on top of that, only 1% of the US population at this time had been tested for COVID-19. Again, this was April 2020. Being only 56 miles northeast of New York City, when the people did eventually leave the city, they all went to the Connecticut suburbs. Their cases went from 412 on April 19th to 2,109 on April 22nd. Did Brand Stark give us this heads up? How was this a thing that soon into the pandemic? Well, the Pentagon had been working on an experimental data collection system that was tied into its next generation combat effort. This was an early test of the Joint All-Domain Command and All-Control concept. This system helped locate upcoming hotspots, which was critical for the national approach to fighting COVID-19. That was back in April 2020, long before these variants even came to light. So if America decided to opt out of this fight, things would escalate drastically. In the 43 months America fought in World War II, around 400,000 soldiers lost their lives. In the first 7 months of this pandemic, 203,000 Americans lost theirs. Today, that death toll in America is around 680,000. Even looking away from the pandemic, like the Taliban for example, their fighters just took over the capital of Afghanistan, resulting in hundreds of thousands to flee, and there's much more happening. According to Express UK, the UN's nuclear watchdog reports that Iran continues to produce uranium metal. This report comes from the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna. Director General Rafael Mariano Grossi said that his inspectors confirmed that Iran produced 200 grams of uranium metal enriched up to 20%, whereas before it was 3.6 grams that was being produced at an Iran plant. If the two nations were to engage in conflict over this, Iran could potentially block the Strait of Hormuz, where 30% of the world's oil is currently traveling. That would of course lead to oil prices rising globally, risking the United States' relationship with other countries. And on top of that, if anything happened with the United States and Iran, places like Syria and Yemen would have their guards up for sure. Some fearing Iranian missile strikes would also be on the agenda. Perhaps the next world war would be fought with bombs and bullets, but what would that look like in the future? Well, James Stavridis, retired admiral, and Elliot Ackerman, former Marine and award-winning novelist, have some ideas. They both co-wrote 2034, a novel of the next world war. And in an article published on the Washington Post last March, they state that a war with China in 10 years would challenge US warfare. Now, although the United States is well equipped with fleets of aircraft carriers, they're still facing new threats. Low-cost swarms of air and sea-based drones equipped with hypersonic missiles, plus the fact that these drones are now unmanned, it changes the game. Future warfare may just revolve around advancements in stealth technology. So an obvious threat at that point would be cyber warfare. Take the 2020 SolarWinds hack for example. The US major technology firm was the subject of a cyber attack that made its way to its clients. The hack went unnoticed for months, and US officials believe it was Russians, and they were able to somehow spy on companies like Firm I, but also the Department of Homeland Security and Treasury Department. The hackers got into more than 400 of the United States Fortune 500 companies. That's a lot of companies. With insufficient military resources, Stavridis and Ackerman believe that the next Pearl Harbor will be via cyberware. America has plenty of involvement in this inevitable Third World War. It's just a matter matter of how it'll happen. If you enjoyed this content, show us some love and hit that thumbs up. I've been your host Taylor McWatters, and thank you for joining us on Life's Biggest Questions.